Chapter 6. The Deal Goes Down. Pete and Eddie stood over by the dumpsters, chain-smoking cigarettes behind the illustrious Swamp Tavern, which was a place designated by a large rectangular lighted sign at the top of a very tall pole that simply said, Tavern, in black on a yellow background. Not quite the Davenport Grand, but it'd do for what needed to be done. Fun fact, the Davenport Grand was under construction at the time of this novelization. They were refused service when they had previously entered. The bartender insisted that he could not serve Pete because he was, quote, visibly intoxicated, end quote. At least Eddie carried his evening buzz with a bit more grace than, say, someone who only moments before suffered a major concussion. At this point, the rain had slowed to a crawl and the night sky was clearing up once more. A drunk staggered out of the bar and fell on the sidewalk cursing. The bartender swung open the door and yelled, "Come back when you've dried out, you wet-brained motherfucker!" The drunk got up slowly and went over to an old Vincent Black Shadow motorcycle parked by the sidewalk under the bright halogen kiss of floodlights. Pete and Eddie quietly laughed at the lush while he stumbled off, cursing and kicking at stationary objects towards Sunset Avenue. "How'd we beat your guy here?" asked Pete as he cracked open one of his remaining beers. You know how these dickweeds roll," replied Eddie, his lips trailing thin plumes of previously unexhaled smoke. "Nash could be here any minute, or he could be here in 3 hours. Then again, he is trying to head out to Seattle. Logic would dictate that he'd want to take care of his runs as soon as possible." Pete repeated his friend's words with a heavy southern drawl. "Logic would dictate." Go fuck yourself, white boy. Not before you do." "Bah!" huffed Eddie before flicking his cigarette butt onto the asphalt, whereupon it was extinguished by the rain with a most fluid rapidity. There was a moment of relative silence between them. A distant clanging bell sounded, heralding another inbound train. The swamp was only a few dozen yards from the tracks. The ground had already begun to vibrate slightly. "So," said Pete, "maybe this is the wrong question, but are you doing anything for Thanksgiving?" "Yeah, you're right. That was the wrong question." Eddie was 3/4 native, 1/4 Irish, which was quite a combo, if I do say so myself. "Want to get drunk?" "Oh, I'm gonna get drunk. I'm gonna get so drunk I sleep right through that motherfucker. Same's as what I do for Columbus Day. Fuck that guinea with his map. And while we're at it, fuck the Pilgrims, fuck New England, fuck Old England, fuck the Mayflower, fuck the Dutch, fuck the Spanish, fuck Squanto, fuck Plymouth fucking Rock, pale-faced piece of shit motherfuckers. I'll kill them all, every last fucking one of them." All right, God, I knew I shouldn't have said nothing. Kind of a touchy subject there, bro, but yes. Yes what? Yes, you can get drunk with me if that's what you're getting at. Sounds good. I'll pick up some decent whiskey, some top-shelf weed. It'll be aight, no worries. A white Toyota RAV4 truck, sans hood, engine exposed to the elements, puttered very slowly down Fifth towards the tavern. Pete saw it first and thought it was another one of his myriad hallucinations. "Is that Nash?" asked Pete. "Yeah," Eddie said. "What the fuck's he doing?" "He's driving slow as shit is what he's doing." "Give me your cash. Come on, quick." "Yes, cash for Nash." Pete handed Eddie some folded up 20s and a 10. Eddie palmed the wad and hustled over to the dude, who instead of just turning into the lot had gone straight over the curb. There was a tremendous abrupt noise, the scraping of rim against concrete. The sharp knives of auditory death caused Pete to break out in a fresh bout of anxious perspiration and palpitations, which really sucked for him because it was in the 30s and falling. Nothing like sweating when it's cold out, Pete thought as he brushed more sweat off of his forehead with the back of his sleeve. As Pete's mind struggled to maintain some semblance of equilibrium, Pete observed the scene and his thoughts went askew as everything started to seem really jazzy to him, like it was one of them old black and white films, back when the soundtrack would cut to a jazzy theme to let the audience know that something underhandedly criminal was afoot. Pete thought he could hear a quartet of horns with the alto saxophone and trumpet playing solo off one another, not smooth but harsh and in allegro, one of the most vivacious of tempos. Freeform jazz, America's first rap music, thought Pete. Then came the piano with huge 12-key minor 7 chords. The music, once conceptualized in Pete's brain, materialized into something tangible, something Pete knew to be a machination of auditorial eccentricities, but still could not ignore. He had his soundtrack. Who's that on piano? Thought Pete. The guy with the weird name, Felonious Drunk? Yeah, that's it. He's in the smoke-filled lounge with the other guys, and I'm the only white dude at the bar, sipping a Tom Collins circa 1963. Pete was lost in his musical thoughts when the handoff occurred. It looked a bit obvious, but not entirely out of place in this side of town. Who knows how many drug deals happened in this parking lot over the course of a weekend? 20? 50? 100? It was one of those little things one could never be absolutely sure of. Yes, one of those little things. Here's another little tidbit that Pete reflected on whilst horns blasted in his ears and dark figures capered around in the shadows conspiring against him. You know what? I don't think I've ever seen a cop drive through here before. What happened next was one of them self-fulfilling prophecies, and normally Pete's spidey sense would have gone crazy, but he had been awake for quite some time, and not only was he markedly less alert, but he was also less paranoid as well. There sometimes comes a point in the total annihilation stage that one comes to accept the demons and ne'er-do-wells creeping around him or her as an inevitability, whereas in the window peeker stage, one expends an inordinate amount of energy evading their tricks and traps, usually by recognizing coincidences and running around like a mental patient trying to defuse the situation or simply hiding in a choice dark corner. Pete should have brought his A game. Instead, he was over at the concession stand buying nachos and beer that was way too overpriced. Eddie had just put the dope in his pocket when the undercover car, a black-on-black streamlined police interceptor, came from the opposite direction of the Toyota, flashing red and blue from the dashboard. Nash, a long-haired greaseball whom was wearing sunglasses at night, panicked and drove right into the front bumper of the cop car with a crash that resounded over the train as it neared and roared with a particular salience of its own, overcoming even the brassy backdrop squeal of the horns. This was one of those times Pete could have saved himself a lot of stress simply by keeping his cool. If he acted naturally, he would not have had anything to fear. He was not in possession of a controlled substance, nor was he witnessed partaking in any illegal activity. The hypodermic syringes he had in his backpack were legal in this state. If he did not react so suddenly to what was going on, i.e., breaking out into a full-fledged gallop, then he wouldn't have had to do shit except walk calmly away and regroup with Eddie at a later point in time. If Eddie successfully managed to evade capture and processing, that is. 2 pale-skinned officers exited the vehicle screaming with their Glocks drawn. One ran over to the front of the Toyota and tried the driver's side door. When it failed to open, he forcibly pulled Nash, who by now was screaming, right out the window while the other sprinted after Eddie. "Shit!" yelled Eddie, who stood there shocked at the suddenness of it all. "Stop! Police!" yelled the rapidly oncoming officer of the law, only a patrolman, still though. After Eddie quickly recovered from the initial calamity, he smiled. Pete couldn't see it though because he was already running in the opposite direction towards the steep muddy hillside bisected by railroad tracks and fortified with large blocks of concrete. There was a distinct possibility they could beat the train if they were fleet enough of foot. It wasn't like they were trapped though. There was a longer way around that went beneath the tracks. That was Pete's plan B though. All Pete heard was the officer's screams as Eddie withdrew a canister full of bear mace and emptied the entire contents in it into the poor bastard's eyes at 25 meters. Needless to say, the 2 young men, the 2 young criminals, took off in fantastic flight as wood leaves carried adrift on a swift gust of late autumn wind.